Imagine dying for 15 minutes, then winning the lottery twice, or falling 18,000 feet without a parachute and surviving. These aren't legends, they're verified statistical errors. Meet 20 individuals who faced impossible odds and won. Forget skill, this is about the moments the universe looked the other way. 1. Bill Morgan was an Australian truck driver who, in 1998, was crushed in a massive accident. He suffered a fatal heart attack during treatment and was clinically dead for 14 minutes. After 12 days in a coma, his family was advised to turn off life support. Then he simply woke up. To celebrate his survival, he bought a scratch-off ticket and won a car. A local news station asked him to reenact the win for a human interest story. Bill bought another ticket on camera, scratched it, and stopped mid-sentence. He had just won the $250,000 jackpot. The footage of his genuine secondary shock is one of the purest moments of luck ever captured, showing a man who beat death and the odds in the span of a few days. 2. Julianne Kupke was a 17-year-old on a flight over the Amazon on Christmas Eve, 1971, when lightning struck her plane, tearing it apart mid-air. Still strapped to her seat, she plummeted 10,000 feet into the dense rainforest canopy. The thick foliage and a localized updraft cushioned her fall, and she woke up the next day with only a broken collarbone. She then spent 11 days trekking through the jungle, using survival skills her father taught her, until she found a boat and was rescued. She was the sole survivor of the 92 people on board, a teenager who fell from the clouds and walked out of the green hell of the Amazon. 3. In 1944, RAF Sergeant Nicholas Aldemod jumped from his burning bomber at 18,000 feet without a parachute. He plummeted into a pine grove and landed in deep snow, surviving without a single broken bone. The Germans only believed his story after finding his charred, unused parachute in the wreckage. 4. Joan Ginther proves that lightning can indeed strike 4 times if you have a PhD in statistics. Over the course of 17 years, this Texas woman won multi-million-dollar jackpots 4 separate times. She won $5.4 million, $2 million, $3 million, and finally a massive $10 million jackpot. While some theorists suggest she cracked the algorithm of the Texas Lottery scratch-off shipments, the official record stands as a series of astronomical coincidences. The odds of this happening to the same person are calculated at 1 in 18 septillion. 5. Ahad Israfil was a teenager working at a store in 1987 when a coworker accidentally discharged a firearm. The blast took away nearly half of Ahad's skull and a significant portion of his brain tissue. Surgeons were stunned when he not only survived the initial trauma, but regained consciousness and began speaking. He eventually received a silicone implant to restore the shape of his head and lived a remarkably full life, graduating with university with honors. He became a medical marvel, proving that the human body can survive even the most catastrophic neurological damage if luck is on its side. 6. Poon Lim was a Chinese sailor whose ship was torpedoed by a Nazi U-boat in 1942. He jumped overboard and found a small wooden raft. He spent the next 133 days alone in the Atlantic Ocean. He survived by catching seabirds, drinking turtle blood, and even catching a shark with a hook made from a nail. When he was finally rescued near Brazil, he had lost only 20 pounds and could still walk unaided. When told no one had ever survived that long on a raft before, he reportedly replied, "I hope no one ever has to break that record." 7. Alan McGee was an American airman who found himself falling from a B-17 at 20,000 feet without a parachute. He crashed through the glass skylight of the Saint Nazaire train station. The glass shattered, absorbing the energy of his fall, and he landed on the floor of the station. Though he suffered internal injuries and a shattered arm, German doctors saved him, and he lived until the age of 84. His survival is often cited as a miracle of physics, where the perfect angle and the right material prevented a certain death. 8. Eva Winsnarska is a German paraglider who, in 2007, was caught in a massive thunderstorm in Australia. A powerful updraft sucked her up to an altitude of 32,000 feet, higher than the summit of Mount Everest. At that height, the oxygen is thin and the temperature is minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit. She lost consciousness due to hypoxia, but her body went into a state of hibernation. She stayed at that death zone altitude for an hour before the storm spat her back out, and she regained consciousness just in time to land her glider safely. She survived a height that kills experienced climbers with oxygen tanks. 9. Phineas Gage is perhaps the most famous case in neuroscience, but he was also incredibly lucky to be alive. In 1848, a large iron rod was propelled through his head by an explosion, entering his cheek and exiting through the top of his skull. Gage never lost consciousness. He sat in a cart, spoke to his doctor, and survived for 12 more years. While his personality changed drastically, becoming the subject of endless medical study, the fact that he survived a 3-foot iron rod through his brain in the mid-19th century remains a statistical miracle. 10. In 1941, John Capes became the only survivor when the submarine HMS Perseus sank 170 feet deep. Using emergency breathing gear, he survived lethal pressure during his ascent. After swimming 5 miles to safety, his story was doubted for decades until divers confirmed the hatch was opened from the inside. 11. Jean Hilliard was a 19-year-old in Minnesota in 1980 when her car skidded into a ditch on a freezing night. She tried to walk to a friend's house but collapsed in the minus 22-degree cold. She was found 6 hours later, frozen solid. Her skin was too hard to puncture with a needle, and her body temperature was too low to register on a thermometer. However, as she thawed out in the hospital, her heart began to flicker. She made a full recovery with no permanent damage, not even needing an amputation, earning her the nickname the Frozen Girl. 12. Mauro Prosperi was an Italian runner in the 1994 Marathon of the Sands when he was caught in a sandstorm. He became disoriented and wandered 180 miles off course into the Sahara Desert. He survived for 9 days by drinking his own urine and eating bats he found in an abandoned shrine. He even attempted suicide to avoid a slow death, but his blood was so thick from dehydration that it wouldn't flow from his slit wrists. He was eventually found by a nomadic family, having lost 30 pounds, and lived to run the same race years later. 13. Adolphe Sax, the saxophone inventor, survived a dozen childhood near-death experiences in Belgium. He swallowed a needle, fell 3 stories, suffered gunpowder burns, was poisoned by sulfuric acid, and nearly drowned twice. His mother called him condemned to misfortune, yet he survived every calamity to revolutionize music with his iconic invention. 14. Lena Paulsson was a Swedish woman who lost her wedding ring in her garden in 1995. She searched for years but eventually gave up hope. 16 years later, while pulling carrots from her garden, she found a carrot that was wearing her ring. The carrot had grown right through the gold band, lifting it from the soil. It is a 1 in a billion occurrence where nature literally hand-delivered a lost treasure back to its owner. 15. Douglas Corrigan was an American aviator in 1938 who was denied permission to fly across the Atlantic. He filed a flight plan to return to California from New York instead. 28 hours later, he landed in Dublin, Ireland. He claimed his compass had malfunctioned and he had simply flown the wrong way. Despite the obvious lie, the public loved his audacity, and Wrong Way Corrigan became a national hero, having successfully navigated the Atlantic in a plane that was legally deemed a crate. 16. John Stapp became the fastest man on Earth to test the limits of human survival. He rode rocket-powered sleds that accelerated him to 632 miles per hour and then stopped in 1.4 seconds. He survived G-forces that were thought to be lethal, bursting capillaries in his eyes and breaking ribs, but he lived to be 89. His luck was in his resilience, proving that the human frame could withstand forces that would have liquefied most people. 17. Charles Joughin, the Titanic's chief baker, survived by drinking heavily before the ship sank. While others quickly succumbed to hypothermia, Joughin paddled for hours in freezing water. His high blood alcohol level reportedly slowed his heat loss, allowing him to stay calm until rescue. He remains a miraculous Titanic survivor. 18. In 2008, homeless Colorado resident Robert Evans survived a nightmare day. First, a car struck him on a bridge, sending him to the hospital. After his release that evening, a train hit him, throwing him 20 feet. Miraculously, he survived both accidents within 12 hours, suffering only a broken leg. 19. Gregory Guriev was a skydiver whose parachute got tangled with his partner during a jump in 2012. Both men were plummeting toward the Earth at terminal velocity with no functional chutes. At the very last second, the mass of tangled fabric acted as a makeshift streamer, slowing them just enough that they crashed into a soft, muddy swamp. Both men walked away with only minor injuries, a survival story that defies every law of aviation safety. 20. Bill Otto nearly lost a fortune when his dog chewed his winning lottery ticket into wet confetti. Persuaded by his wife, he took the scraps to lottery officials. Using forensic techniques, they miraculously reconstructed the ticket and verified his numbers. Bill was awarded the $20 million jackpot, defeating a hungry dog. History proves luck often trumps planning. We've covered 20 people who cheated death or found fortune against impossible odds. This is just the beginning. What incredible luck story did we miss? Tell us in the comments. Hit like and subscribe for more bizarre tales from history's bottomless well.